Mark had no idea how to feel anymore. He hadn't even found the time to cry between leading the search parties and consoling his wife. He was numb to the world, and the only thing that would fix things would be finding his daughter. Mark knew the chances were slim, but he had to keep searching. But the heartbroken father had no idea how close the final clues would be. For 2 months, Mark and his family had been living in a nightmare. Their daughter Emily had gone missing, and despite the efforts of the police and the entire neighborhood, there had been no sign of her. Mark and his wife had been consumed with worry and despair, unable to sleep or eat properly, and constantly haunted by the thought of their little girl out there somewhere, alone and scared. As Christmas approached, Mark knew that it was going to be a difficult time for his family. Emily loved Christmas, and they had always made a big deal out of decorating the house and putting up the tree. But this year, with Emily gone, the thought of celebrating anything seemed impossible. Mark knew that he had to put up the Christmas tree. Their spirits would be even lower if it wasn't up. He hoped that maybe the universe would bring her back, guided by the star on top. He looked up at the attic, willing himself to go up and fetch the tree and the decorations. He first got the tree down and set it up, but then he noticed something: the decoration box was missing. Mark couldn't understand what was going on. Puzzled, Mark searched the attic thoroughly, but the box was nowhere to be found. He couldn't understand how it could have disappeared. He had always been careful to keep it in the same spot every year. As he was about to give up, he suddenly remembered something. A few months earlier, his daughter Emily had been playing in the attic. Emily loved to explore and often found herself rummaging through the boxes and trunks stored there. His heart broke thinking about his daughter. Mark's heart sank as he realized what had happened. Emily must have taken the box of Christmas decorations and played with them. Mark went to Emily's room. He sat down on her bed and scanned the room for any hints as to where they were. He found a drawing that Emily must have scribbled down just before she went missing. He was grateful for his daughter's innocence and the joy she brought to his life. But then he noticed a tiny detail in the drawing that made his blood run cold. It would have him sprinted back to the attic. That's when the father saw what the clue in the drawing was telling him. There was a small gap in the insulation, and he could see a glimmer of light coming through. Curious, he climbed up to investigate, and what he found there made his heart skip a beat. But what he was about to find would change his life forever. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. Mark Lawrence was a family man through and through. He worked hard all year long, looking forward to the last month of the year. It was the festive season, and he couldn't wait to spend some quality time with his young daughter, Emily, and his beautiful wife, Carla. Mark had always been a bit of a workaholic, but he knew that his family was the most important thing in his life. He made sure to take time off during the holidays so that he could be with them and create some special memories. The first thing on Mark's to-do list was to take Emily to the mall. She was only 4 years old, but she was already so excited about Christmas. She had been talking about Santa for weeks, and Mark couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she met him in person. Even though Christmas was still 2 months away, Mark couldn't help but get into the spirit a little early. Emily would beg him to take her to get mistletoe and stockings. Next, they had to pick out something Emily had been thinking about for months. Mark and Emily went to pick out a Christmas tree. They spent hours searching for the perfect one, and when they finally found it, Emily was over the moon. She couldn't wait to decorate it with all of their favorite ornaments. Mark kept all of their old decorations in a box ready for each year, and every Christmas they'd add to it. Carla was just as excited about the holidays as Emily was. She had spent weeks planning the perfect Christmas dinner, and she had even baked a batch of her famous sugar cookies for the occasion. There wasn't anything that could spoil their fun, or at least so they thought. But just a few days later, tragedy would strike. Mark loved watching her in the kitchen, and he couldn't wait to taste all of her delicious creations. As Christmas Day approached, Mark felt a sense of peace and contentment that he hadn't felt in a long time. He was surrounded by the people he loved most in the world, and he knew that he was truly blessed. But one evening, things would take a dark turn. One October morning, Mark woke up and put a pot of coffee on before reading the morning paper. He always woke up before the rest of his family. He was an early bird. After a few hours, he decided to wake Emily up. They had a plan to go to the mall again, but after knocking on her door, she wouldn't answer. He decided to go in, but what he saw would haunt him forever. Mark opened his daughter's bedroom door, assuming that she was still asleep. But when he looked inside, he felt like vomiting. Mark paced back and forth outside of Emily's bedroom, his heart racing with fear. He had just checked on his 4-year-old daughter, only to find that she was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as Mark realized that his daughter was missing. He raced throughout the house, calling her name and searching every room, but she was nowhere to be found. He called out to her, but there was no response. Mark knew he had to act fast, so he contacted the police and reported the situation. They arrived on the scene quickly and began to search the neighborhood for any sign of Emily. They went door to door, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious. The entire neighborhood came together, searching high and low for the missing girl. They searched parks, playgrounds, and even abandoned buildings. But despite their efforts, Emily was nowhere to be found. As the hours passed, Mark's fear turned to desperation. He couldn't imagine life without his little girl. He kept thinking about what might have happened to her and who could be responsible, but there would be no trace of her anywhere. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no sign of Emily. Mark was devastated, and the community mourned the loss of the sweet little girl who had captured their hearts. Mark and Carla found themselves crying day and night, their emotions raw and unfiltered. Every tear shed was accompanied by accusations, each trying to find some semblance of control in a situation that felt utterly helpless. Mark pointed fingers at Carla, blaming her for not watching Emily closely enough. The house that once resonated with Emily's laughter now echoed with constant arguing. Carla, exhausted and broken, fought back with equal fervor. "You were supposed to hear if anything happened. How could you sleep through it?" she retorted. The tension between them grew unbearable, each argument reopening the wound of their missing daughter. Mark spent sleepless nights replaying the events of that fateful day, searching for any clue he might have missed. His mind was a storm of guilt and sorrow, haunted by the image of Emily's empty bed. Every noise in the night jolted him awake, a cruel reminder of the silence that now filled their home. Carla, too, was tormented by her thoughts. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face as she blamed herself for not being more vigilant. Friends and family tried to offer support, but their words felt hollow. Mark and Carla were trapped in their own bubble of misery, unable to find solace in anything or anyone. The holiday season, once a time of joy and togetherness, only deepened their despair. The sight of decorations and festive lights was a painful reminder of the happiness they had lost. In their desperation, Mark and Carla turned to anything that might bring Emily back. They consulted with private investigators, psychics, and anyone who claimed they could help. Each lead, no matter how far-fetched, was pursued with fervor, but always ended in disappointment. Their hope, once a beacon of light, was now a flickering candle in the darkness. The constant cycle of hope and despair was exhausting, leaving them both emotionally and physically drained. The strain took its toll on their relationship. They could no longer find comfort in each other's presence. Mark's accusations grew harsher and Carla's defenses more desperate. Their marriage, already fragile, was crumbling under the weight of their grief. The love they once shared seemed like a distant memory, buried beneath layers of pain and anger. In an effort to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home, Mark would often go for long walks. He would wander through the neighborhood, retracing the steps of the search parties, as if he could somehow bring Emily back by sheer willpower. Carla, on the other hand, sought solace in Emily's room. She would sit on her daughter's bed, clutching her favorite stuffed animal, and whisper prayers into the empty air. Amidst the turmoil, they clung to the memories of their daughter. Every photograph, every toy, every piece of clothing became a precious relic of a happier time. They would spend hours reminiscing about Emily's laughter, her mischievous smile, and the way she lit up their lives. These memories were both a source of comfort and a dagger to their hearts, reminding them of what they had lost. The unanswered questions gnawed at their minds. Why had Emily disappeared? Where was she now? Mark and Carla knew that they might never find the answers they desperately sought. But giving up was not an option. The hope of finding their daughter, however faint, was the only thing keeping them going. Despite the blame, the arguments, and the overwhelming grief, Mark and Carla held on to one another. They knew that, deep down, they were united in their love for Emily and their desperate need to find her. In the darkest moments, they would cling to each other, finding a flicker of strength in their shared pain. The road ahead was uncertain, but they knew that they had to face it together, for Emily's sake. One cold January morning, just when it seemed that the world had forgotten about Emily, a new lead emerged. A neighbor mentioned seeing a man with a little girl matching Emily's description at a park several miles away. Mark and Carla's hearts raced with cautious optimism as they relayed the information to the police. The authorities immediately followed up on the tip, and Mark and Carla found themselves clinging to each other in anticipation, a mix of hope and fear swirling within them. As the police pursued the lead, Mark and Carla decided they couldn't just sit and wait. They joined the search, distributing flyers and asking anyone they encountered if they had seen Emily. Their determination reignited a spark within the community, and volunteers once again rallied to help. Every face they passed became a potential witness, and every corner they turned held the possibility of finding their daughter. They refused to let the despair of the past months overshadow this newfound hope. Despite the ongoing tension and the blame that had fractured their relationship, Mark and Carla found a renewed sense of unity in their search for Emily. Their shared mission brought moments of reconciliation, brief instances where they could put aside their anger and support one another. In those moments, Mark and Carla realized that their love for Emily and their desire to bring her home were stronger than any resentment or blame. They leaned on each other, drawing strength from their mutual determination. As the weeks stretched on with no concrete leads, Carla began to slip further into a deep depression. The weight of Emily's absence crushed her spirit, leaving her feeling hollow and desolate. She couldn't bring herself to leave Emily's room, finding solace only in the familiar scent of her daughter's belongings. The room became her sanctuary and her prison, a place where she could hold on to the memories of happier times while shutting out the painful reality. Mark watched helplessly as Carla withdrew more and more each day. He tried to coax her out, encouraging her to take small steps towards normalcy, but she would only shake her head and retreat further into Emily's world. Her eyes, once full of life, were now glazed over with a distant sorrow that seemed impenetrable. The house felt colder, emptier, and Mark feared he was losing Carla too. Carla's depression deepened with each passing day. She barely ate, and sleep was a distant memory. She spent her days sitting on Emily's bed, clutching her daughter's favorite blanket, tears silently streaming down her face. The sight of Carla's despair broke Mark's heart, but he felt powerless to pull her out of the abyss. He longed to help her, to share in their grief and find a way forward together, but the wall of sorrow between them seemed insurmountable. In those quiet moments, surrounded by Emily's toys and drawings, Carla would whisper her daughter's name, begging for a sign, a miracle, anything that would bring Emily back to them. The pain of their shared loss hung heavy in the air, an unspoken bond that kept them both tethered to a past they could not change and a future they could not imagine. Despite the best efforts of the police and the community, Emily's disappearance remained a mystery. Mark never gave up hope that his daughter would be found, but as time went on, it seemed less and less likely. 2 months went by, and Mark never stopped searching for answers. Christmas was now around the corner. He dedicated his life to finding out what had happened to his daughter and bringing those responsible to justice. But no matter how hard he tried, the truth remained elusive. Mark was left with only memories of his beloved daughter. He never forgot her smile, her laugh, or the way she would wrap her arms around his neck and give him a big hug. And even though she was gone, she would always hold a special place in his heart. But the dad had no idea how much closer his daughter was than he thought. But would the dad find her in time? The last 2 months of Mark's life had been unimaginably hard. The police couldn't find Emily, and nor could he. No one could find her anywhere, no matter how hard they looked. The couple was in shock and disbelief. How had their daughter vanished out of thin air? It broke their hearts to know that she was alone and lost somewhere. A bitter reminder of his daughter was that Christmas was fast approaching. It was right around the corner, but it would be nothing without Emily. The tree they had picked out together would only make him feel terrible. It was the worst few months of their lives. Mark still somehow found the strength to put up the Christmas tree. He somehow felt like it would become a beacon in the dark to bring her home. He had to go get the old decorations from the attic, something he didn't want to do. But he found his strength and went into the dusty room. But then he noticed that the box was gone. Mark looked through every box in the attic, but he couldn't find them anywhere. Where could they have gone? But then Mark remembered something important. With Emily's obsession with Christmas, she was playing with the box of decorations before she disappeared. Emily would explore every inch of the house as she played. It wasn't uncommon for her to go into the attic. Mark knew that she must have taken them, but he wasn't ready to go in there. He would have to face something very difficult. He'd have to go into his missing daughter's bedroom. Mark went into Emily's room and looked around. He didn't see any decorations, but then he noticed something else. There was a drawing of Emily's on her desk. She must have drawn it right before she disappeared. He looked through the note and noticed something profound. The picture was a crude drawing of Emily playing in the attic, but he noticed something he had never seen before. There was an opening behind her. Carla told him that she'd checked the attic. She said nothing was there. He wasn't going to take her word for it and run up himself. That's when he saw the gap from the picture after prying some of the insulation loose. There, huddled in a corner of the attic, was Emily. She was dirty and disheveled, but alive and unharmed. Mark couldn't believe it. He had searched the attic countless times and had never seen any sign of her. But there she was. It turned out that she had been hiding in the attic the whole time, too scared to come out even when she heard her parents calling for her. She had been bitten by a raccoon. He got an exterminator to deal with the pests. He had no idea they were in the attic. In the end, it was a Christmas miracle. Emily was home and the family was reunited just in time for the holidays. Mark and his wife knew that they had a lot of healing to do, but they were grateful for the gift of their daughter's safe return. There were strange bite marks on her leg. She looked at him weakly and said, "Daddy, I've been so scared. There was something up here and I got hurt, so I couldn't go back down." Mark hugged her tight and examined the bites. They looked like they were from a rodent and they were infected. He rushed her to a hospital, where the doctors told Mark that she would be fine. On Christmas morning, Emily woke up early and ran to the living room to see what Santa had brought her. Mark and Carla followed close behind, and they all sat together on the floor, surrounded by wrapping paper and ribbons. As they opened their presents and shared the joy of the season, Mark felt a deep sense of gratitude. He knew that he had everything he could ever want in life, and he was grateful for every moment he got to spend with his family. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable tale like this one.